every week. So our goals for you are simple. Students will understand the importance. This class is Humanity and Sin. Will understand the importance of the doctrine. You'll understand the various views of man that are in our culture. You'll understand what it means for man to be made in the image of God. Students will understand the issues regarding the fall of man and the equity issues regarding men and women. And then students will understand the nature of sin. Students will understand the source, results, and magnitude of sin. I was going to include how to sin, but I thought we probably already knew how to do that. We've graduated from that class, yes. It's got that young. I got my degree in sinology very young. Students will understand the practical and social should be implications. I don't know why I have and practical and social implications of sin. So those are the things that we're hoping to achieve. We're going to talk each week about one of these aspects, and every week you'll have a couple chapters to read. And then our attendance here is worth 100 points. Our quizzes are worth 100 points. The quizzes are on the reading. So every time you read Ryrie, we'll have a quiz. The reading in Ryrie is worth 150 points, and your FAIN exam, or your final exam, as others would call it, is worth 150 points. This class is unique. Every other class that I teach here, I've taught before. I am writing this class as I go. So hence the phrase FAIN. Hence the phrase FAIN. Yeah, so we're gonna deal with that. Yeah, I'm not tired. The books that you have even have the big books that you have mistakes in them. But I have gone over and over and over those. I've taught it a million times, so I've corrected most mistakes. This stuff I'm just, I'm winging it with it. Not really, but I'm developing as I go. I'm using about 6 different sources to work through. So it's a lot of material. I enjoy the reading, but it's a lot of material. So we're going to talk about humanity and sin, or the technical names are anthropology and hamartiology. So that's just fancy names for saying man and sin. We're going to start with anthropology. We'll spend about 3.5 weeks on anthropology, about 3.5 weeks on sin. Our text, or our book or our verse that we kind of take our thoughts from, is Psalm 8, verses 3 and 4, when it says, "When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you take care of him?" So when we begin to think about anthropology, we do ask the question, God, why us? What makes us someone you think about? What makes us worthy or part of your plan? Now, we begin tonight by asking ourselves simply, why do we study this doctrine? What is our reasoning for studying this doctrine? Well, first of all, because of its relationship to other doctrines. Now, I had not thought through this, to be honest with you. But when you think about the doctrine of humanity, there is so much more in learning it that you will learn. For instance, since man is made in the image of God, the study of man sheds light on theology proper. That's the name for the study of God. In other words, as I learn more about man, since man is made in the image of God, the product of that is that I understand more about the image of God. I understand more about God. Since Jesus Christ came to earth as a man, the study of man sheds light on Christology, the study of Jesus Christ. I mean, we spend a lot of time on the earthly life of Christ, right? Christ became what? A man. Not part man, he was a real man. So as I study what a man is, I study, in essence, Christology. Since God's plan of redemption has as its primary objective mankind, the study of man sheds light on soteriology, the doctrine of salvation. I understand what God has to do to save us. Since angels are a little higher than man, the study of man says we're made a little lower than the angels, so angels are a little higher. The study of man sheds light on angelology, the study of angels. So in at least those 4 areas, the study of man enhances our areas of other theology. Secondly, and this is for our benefit probably the most important, because of the convergence of biblical revelation and human concern is found in the doctrine of man. In other words, you have biblical revelation, which most people could care less about. What are we concerned about? So it meets there. The selfishness of man meets at the biblical revelation about man. So we have a reason to study it. Why? Because we're concerned about ourselves. Everyone agrees man exists, and thus this is a good place to start talking theology. In other words, when you're talking to somebody, they may not believe that God exists. They may not believe you can know anything about God. They may be an atheist, I don't think God exists, or agnostic, I don't think you can know anything about God. But do they believe that man exists? You'll meet a few people who think that we're all part of a dream, but you're really not going to get that far with them anyway. Whoa, over here. You know, they're out of it. So if you run into an atheist, you and an atheist have a common agreement. You believe in the existence of man. It's a good place to start talking about theology. Mankind is obsessed with mankind. Thus, this makes this a good place to start theology. We're obsessed with ourselves. Go to any library. How many books are written about man? Because of the great debate of who man is and where man is from in our world today. There's a huge debate about really what is a man? What are men? I say that in a generic way, man and women. It's a huge debate. And what is the essence of us? And what can we do with reference to us? For the naturalist, the behavioralist, he seeks to modify man's behavior. That's all he's trying to do. Pavlov's dog. So you know what? We'll fix your behavior by this. You know? Other people think the inherent goodness of man can see his faults, man can know what's wrong with him, and all you have to do is be Rogerian. I have a problem today. So, you have a problem. I'm thinking about killing my spouse. So, you want to injure somebody close to you. If I just am reflective, sooner or later you're going to go, oh, I'm being bad. So, there's a great debate, and we need to engage in this. We'll look at each of these a little bit closer next week, but some see man as a machine. Work. Produce a product. Some see man as simply an animal, a monkey. And see, that's an amazing question if you think about that. If you think about what happens in Christendom, we get pressured to accept on some level evolution, so we start working through something called theistic evolution. Yes, we believe that God started it all. But the theory or the thoughts regarding man blow that to pieces. Because Adam and Eve, what were they? If you're a theistic evolutionist, God started the process. So at one point, Adam was a Neanderthal who did what? He evolved, right? But that gets a little hairy when you come to Eve. He evolved so much that he took out his rib and made a woman. A theistic evolutionist has to say that Adam and Eve are special creations of God. Or you're in real trouble. Animal, man as a sexual being, Freud, who studied psychotic people, and then said this is what all of our problems are. Yeah, he was a little problem. He has a problem. Man as a pawn of the universe. That is to say, it's amazing. If you've ever read any of The Cosmos by Carl Sagan, Sagan is a naturalist. What I mean by that is Sagan believes that everything happens through natural processes so that it couldn't be otherwise. That's what a naturalist believes. But yet he says we can change or save the universe. He said that before he died, anyway. It's contradictory. But simply the cosmos is all there is, and it's going to do what it's going to do, and you're going to do what you're going to do. It calls the shots. Man as a free moral agent, man is having choice. Where does that concept come from? And is that important? And then man as a social being. You know, how does that all relate? These are important questions that the world is asking. And it affects the way people view themselves and the decisions that they make. If you think you're just an animal and you've got no choice, then you got no choice. If you think that your destiny is sealed, you're a pawn in the universe's hand, then you do what Kurt Cobain did. There's no meaning. I'm stuck. I'm through. I'm taking my life. If you believe that you're a free moral agent, man, wow, that's wild. You mean I could make decisions? I could be free to make decisions. I do not have to be what everything else says I have to be. Wow. Where does that come from, though? Where does that thought come from? So those are some of the things that we'll seek to explore. Also, because of its effect on how we minister. That is to say, how we minister is affected by how we view man. First of all, because we believe in the eternality of the soul, what is our focus in ministry? That's right, to help your soul. I had Dr. Jeremy, he's the big doctor who goes to our church. I had him on my radio show, and I said, you know, he prays with his patients. I said, why do you pray with your patients? He said, because, he says, as a doctor, he said, I can't cure death. He said, I'm putting a Band-Aid on. Don't matter what you have. You know, I'm just trying to give you a couple more years. But I can't cure death. He understands that what he's ministering to is not simply a human standing before him. That's all there is. There's something behind that person that lives forever. So that's how we think. And then the place of intellect. We believe that man has brains. And remember what the Bible says. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So our mind is part of the process. And then, do we see man as trichotomous, dichotomous, or holistically? What do we mean by trichotomous? Three what? That's very good. Three what? Well, as you read, take a second, and if you have a Bible, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thess chapter 5. at verse 23. Okay. Do you see a 3 there? Spirit, soul, and body, right? So, in some theologies, we see God, we see man as three parts to man. Some people would say that relates then to the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. What would a dichotomist say? What are the two sides? Body and spirit. Theologians, because they want to be fancy, would say material and immaterial. Because, we got to be fancy. Because otherwise everyone would understand this first thing. So we can't just say body. So the theologian would say material and immaterial. So now, is there a reason to believe that soul and spirit should be thought of only as one? Well, take a look at Hebrews chapter 4. You've probably heard Hebrews 4:12 somewhere before. What does it say the Word of God is able to do? It's able to discern between soul and spirit. But what does that tell us about the division between soul and spirit? Well, but also what does it tell us, though? It's hard to distinguish, though, right? It seems like it's a God work to discern soul or spirit. Now, what do you think the holistic thinking would be? Yes. Body and soul, spirit and soul. That's part of it. I said not part of it. The holistic, in Christian world, the holistic view is that we can't break you down to body, soul, and spirit. So, for instance, has anyone here ever been really tired? Have you ever gone like 18, 24 hours without sleep? Okay, and you're exhausted. Let me ask you a question. How's your spirit doing right then? And you know what? You don't care. How's your soul doing right there? You know what? You don't know. You know why? Because you don't care. Have you ever been depressed on the inside? How does your body feel when you're depressed on the inside? But how does your body feel? You're drained. So do you see how your spirit affects your body and how your body expects the material affects the immaterial and the immaterial affects. So that's why a holistic person, and Berkouwer in his book on man will argue that the way to look at man is not trichotomy, not dichotomy, but holistically. And he will argue that what Paul says is, may your whole body, soul, and spirit, that Paul is looking at it holistically. That he's not breaking you up. Paul, rather than breaking you up, he's actually tying you together. It's interesting. We'll talk about it.
I was reading some theology, which I thought about it too, because someone taught me over at Christ before. But I was reading and it was like the immaterial and the material together, that is the soul. The soul means your whole being, which means your material and immaterial. You're a soul being. You're a whole being. Soul means whole. You're a whole.
Soul means whole.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll have to think about that, but it sounds good.
I don't know, but I was reading something like that the soul means your whole being, which means your immaterial and material. In the
Right, right. And another thing that we'll discuss, but we'll go over for a moment now here. When we think about being made in the image of God, okay? You have to think for a second here. When God did that, what did he make?
I think that when he said that, because we don't have bodies, but I think the similarity is there.
Well, walk with me. If I were to remove Brandon's spirit, and I don't have that ability, you know that, over here, would Brandon be able to see? No. So, does God see all? Yes. Okay. So, in that we have bodies, it enables us to reflect the image of God in in a limited way with reference to the attributes of God. Because without the eyes, if I'm just immaterial, God sees all, I'm able to see. I have, and the Bible even uses an anthropomorphism regarding God, saying the eyes of the Lord go to and fro throughout the earth. If I'm just a spirit, I can't hear, yet God hears. If I'm just a spirit, I can't act, and God acts. So in making us in his image, he gives us a body, and the body is not, the importance of the body is how it allows us to project some of the attributes of God. Does that make sense?
Right.
But unless you read about this, you don't think about that.
No.
Well, unless you guys sit around your house, I don't know, man, maybe, when you don't have a life, maybe, I don't know. Well, how do we go about studying this doctrine? What will we do? Well, here's a few things we'll do. Number one, we'll look at the biblical statement or statements regarding the origin of man. We'll spend a lot of time on that because that's going to be important to us. Secondly, we'll look at the biblical statements regarding the image of God in man, and we will try to be definitive in what it means to be created in the image of God. And then we'll ask ourselves the question, what happened when we fell? Is that what it says in the Hebrew? It got screwed up?
But we didn't lose the image of God, it just got messed up.
How do we know we didn't lose the image of God? Well, is there any biblical evidence that we didn't lose the image of God? What?
I think I'm just packed with
A lot of theology. Well, take a second and turn all the way to the book of Genesis. Remember that it is in Genesis 1:27-28 that we learn that we're made in the image of God, right? Well, when in Genesis does man fall? But what chapter? First, Cain and Abel. Okay, so that's 3. Go to chapter 9. So we're all in agreement that 9 is after the fall, right? Okay. Chapter 9, verse 6. Says if you shed the blood of anyone, right? What's supposed to happen to you? Why? So even after the fall, when we messed up, we still have this intrinsic value because the image of God is still stamped on us. You know, one of the most amazing verses in the Bible that I missed for years. One day I was thinking about it. I did have one of those moments where you think and go, oh. Jesus and his disciples were confronted by the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were really, really, really frustrated that Rome ruled them. And they didn't like paying taxes to Rome. So they set Jesus up in a situation where they tried to get him to be a tax evader. And they said, is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Rome, to Caesar? And Jesus said, bring a coin here. And he said, whose image is on this coin? And they said, Caesar's. And they said, give to Caesar that which is Caesar's. So whose image is, what we miss is, he was saying, whose image is stamped on you? So you should give to God yourself. I don't know, I think it's a buffalo. You may have had a buffalo quarter. I think so. I think it's a powerful thought. And then we're going to look at biblical passages dealing with the position of man in creation. And we're going to look at the biblical passages dealing with the very nature of man, who we are. And we're going to look at the biblical description regarding the behavior of man. And hopefully that will take us through much of anthropology. We're going to spend some time with reference to the concept as well of the sexes. That is to say, you know, what is it that makes them different? And then the issue of equality in that. We do have, as we study this doctrine, a certain set of limitations. First of all, not everything we would like to know about man is revealed in the Scriptures. Not everything that we want to know is there. Secondly, not everything about man is discernible by anyone other than God. Some things about us only our Creator understands. There is a conflict of interest between what we want man to be and what man is, and this makes it hard for us to accept certain conclusions about man. In other words, I don't want to think certain ways about man. I would prefer to have this view of man because it makes me feel better about myself. And the difficulty is the Bible comes in conflict with that. I think that's why the Bible becomes problematic for people. I heard Penn of Penn and Teller today, and someone asked him, why are you an atheist? He said, well, I started reading the Bible in high school. And he said, I saw that in the Bible, Jesus said you should leave your family and follow him. He said, it just didn't seem right to me. Okay. So it comes in conflict with what you want, so that bothers you. So you become an atheist? You need to work on that, buddy. And then our personal experience has polluted our understanding of the data. I have come to this, and we'll talk about this amazing conclusion. I have two major problems. One, I am finite. What does that mean? That means that if it were possible for the information that I needed, all of it, to be downloaded to me, I could not handle it. But it's worse than that. I couldn't process it. But it's worse than that. The information that I get, I process wrongly. I just process it wrongly because I'm finite. My senses do not correctly figure it out. On my best day, maybe I'm okay, but I'm still out of it. Well, I think they have a little bit of an up, but even a little bit of an up, I mean, it's great, but it is just a little bit of an up. I mean, I think my IQ goes to bright normal, so I'm like a 111, okay? So you meet a Mensa. Mensa's what? 160? You got to be 150 or above to be a Mensa? 50 points? You know, come on. You know, you're a little sharper than I am. Okay. But really, compare. And then here's the thing that really bothers me. I'm not just finite, I'm fallen. So not only do I can't process it, when I process it, the depravity in me, that's right, I can't do anything right with it. So as I'm studying these things, I have to just be aware that this is the reality for me. Now, I've struggled with one particular issue, and that is the issue of terms. You'll note that the class is called Humanity and Sin. Did you notice that? In the old days, we would call it what? Man and sin. But we don't want to offend anybody. The difficulty we have is in the world that we live in, when you have a gender name for anything, it becomes difficult. It's not a councilman, it's a council person. It's not a selectman, it's a select person. And I understand some of the rationale behind that. But I've been reading a book by Grudem on theology. And I think that we need to be careful not to cede, that is to give up, an important theological point by being politically accurate. Turn to Genesis chapter 5. Verses 1 and 2, it rehashes for us the creation story, right? Tells us that man is made in the likeness of God. Tells us that male and female, they're created. What did God name man? Man. It says, male and female, he created them, and he blessed them, and he named them man. What do you have, the NIV? NLT. And see, here's the rub. The Hebrew word there, this is really deep. Watch this. Adam. The Hebrew word is Adam. Man. So the only reason why I bring this up, I think we need to be very sensitive. We don't make people feel second-class citizens, yada, 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 yada. I'm all in that. But there are certain things we can't cede. We can't lose the point on. One of them is God chose, and he could have easily chosen woman, but for whatever reason he chose Adam. So I'm hesitant to call us humankind. I'm hesitant to call us humanity, even though really humanity has in it man. I think the essence, I think the two reasons for that, for the calling us Adam, is because of in the divine order, not the order of equality, but the divine order of position, the economic position, the man ranks higher than the woman. That's what it is. So I think that also, to the second point, there is a certain responsibility that is male. And remember when I talked last semester about the woman not leading the church? The two rationales for it were, number one, the order of creation, then the order of the fall. The order of creation is an important order. God has a plan in that. So I think what we have to be very, very careful to do is to make sure that, number one, we do not move things away from what God has said they are. And number two, we, at least as Christian theologians, have an apologetic for why, a reason we think God has it this way. I think that's just the nature of it. It's important that we have that. And I don't want to lose that argument, that picture of Adam with reference to mankind. I think that you're being incredibly simplistic. And I think that when one does that, it's kind of like the people who say it's a fetus. You know what the Latin word for fetus is. What is it? It's baby. So all you're saying is it's a baby. So why don't you just say it's a baby? Because you want to redefine it so it sounds, so it's more palatable. And there's a guy named Leonard Sweet, and I don't always agree with him. He's high church. He's like, I think, a Methodist. And I'm not much of a Methodist lover. But Sweet says that we have a real problem in our world. And he calls it the problem of Starbucks. How many of you have coffee at Starbucks? Something like that? Yeah. No, you would never. It's just too expensive. You're not going in there wasting your money. It is strong. When you go to Starbucks, is it small, medium, or large? What is it? Say it. Venti, and then? And it's not even tall. But here's the thing. For the vast majority of people, and I watch them. I was in a Starbucks today. I'll have a Venti. They have adopted the language of Starbucks. And what Sweet says is, the Bible has a language. We need to teach the culture what the language is. We spend so much time trying to translate what we believe into the culture's belief system. But I do it. I mean, how many if you're here on a Sunday morning, I'm running videos. I'm telling jokes. Why? I'm trying to get the culture to listen to me. But I don't disagree. I think there's a part of that that's very good. But I'm saying we need to teach people our language. Well, and it's a misnomer for us to think, because it is not just one step. That is to say, culture is not simply trying to get one step. Once it has that step, what you said is correct. It'll just once gay marriage is the norm, then it'll be the next thing. Because the issue is not that. The issue is we don't want anyone to tell us what to do. So that problem continues to become a problem. It just keeps getting. So you're better off just going, you know what? This is our language. So I don't want to offend anybody by saying man, but I was at a situation where someone led in prayer, and they started their prayer, "Dear Heavenly Parent." Dear Heavenly Parent, because, and they were a sincere person, a follower of Christ, but they didn't want to offend anybody, so they said, "Dear Heavenly Parent," not realizing what they had done had stripped away why does God say, when Jesus said, when you pray, pray thus, our Father who art in heaven. Why does Jesus say that? Well, because he wants us to see God as our Father. That's what he wants us to see. So when we see that God named humanity Adam, he wants us to have a certain view of mankind. And if we change that, what we do then is we begin to move down this slope of, okay, this, and we get ourselves in trouble. Yes?
So when God named male and female Adam,
Adam.
but Adam named woman because
Him.
so he made her
Yes.
woman.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, in reality we're all Adam, but Adam said woman is woman.
Okay, I'll take that.
No?
No, it works. It works. Well, so next week, I'm going to let you go early. But so next week, read Ryrie. What are the chapters? 29 through 31. We'll have a quiz on it. And we'll enhance our discussion next week about the origin of man. We'll talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're facing. We'll talk about the origin of man and then how that all plays out in how we view things. All right? You're dismissed. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.